Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's you can hear the wind, not on the phone, but you can hear it. It's just above us. We don't yet have leaves, but we do have springs of green showing up. The Jefferson temperature today is 72 degrees. Thank you. The humidity is 63, and the winds are 24. And I felt it, but I only heard it a moment ago, and I haven't felt it while I've been walking for a while. The wandering on a weekend day doesn't allow you, nor need it, to avoid the disaster that is the administration that seems hell-bent on destroying America as it was and perhaps for all time. And in this category, I ran into a woman, Yvette Jacobs. I was in a store that's Resell It, Relove It, excuse me. I've done this before, pardon me. And the shopkeep told me that when we were talking politics, that there was one person in the store right then who'd suffered a separation from the government. Now, I've posted the short interview I did with Yvette, and she is a woman. She's careful in her speech. She's an enjoyable person. Her job with the government involved science, detailed and complicated thinking. She's working on a defense contract, and the contract was cut out, and so she's one of those people that are put out. Now, the contracting agency is doing all they can for her, but she's not the only one. And from my conversation with the shopkeep, there are more and more people in that situation. And as Yvette says in our discussion, it's bound to affect people who buy property, people who can't afford property, people who can't afford food, the others who are losing their jobs, and who may not have as conscientious an HR department as the one she experiences. But she has that spirit, and it's a go-to spirit, and she's going to survive. I had this image in my mind of two kids I once saw fooling around in the changing room when we were getting ready to go swim. And one was running around saying, I work out, and had this level of enthusiasm. Now, she's an adult woman, but you just felt that energy coming off her. And it is so wrong that a person with her ability, the contribution she has to make, and her fidelity over 6 years to this company are overlooked in a second. No transition, no nothing. So this is one element of the wrecking ball that is Doge and Trump and Bannon. They celebrate breaking the law. They celebrate crushing, crashing, burning, destroying the nation in its best aspects. It is like if you let them loose in the Louvre, they would take a spray can to treasures of art that go back many years. If you think when Aristotle spoke about government, as did Plato, that they weren't talking about one of the most demanding and artful undertakings any public and or private person can take. These guys are so set on hate and hurting and seizures of power and self-aggrandizement that they don't see what they're doing, because what they see is death and destruction. That's what they want. It's not a question of understanding. It's a question of they're on a different track. And when I hear legislators who, under other circumstances, might rightly expect a dialogue with the other side, might lead to cooperation, compromise in a more realistic way, these are not those people. No more than they were for past wannabe dictators. And he's moving very closely to that. As I speak to you, sometime today, we were sending a guided missile destroyer to defend against an enemy, treating immigration as an invasion force, meaning war, when we have nothing of the sort. In other words, we'll make up a story even to catapult us into a position of having a lie to justify the extremes we take. In this case, a military move on our borders, not justified by the law, nor by international law. This is no military invasion. This is an occupation by Trump and Elon and Bannon. And the sooner those Pollyannish elected officials understand that, the sooner we have a chance to stop this horrendous devolvement of an historic achievement in America to move from a Declaration of Independence to embody so many of the things that were only imperfectly formed at the origins of our government. So, I salute those who are working for jobs, and I think the rest of us have to be fighting to get their jobs back, and fighting by giving a kick in the ass to every member of Congress who doesn't get it, starting with the leadership. Maybe there should be a leadership vote in the Senate. It's not acceptable to lay down and play dead on a continuing resolution, that is, how the government's going to spend its money, and what monies will not be spent because of that continuing resolution that is for the general welfare of our citizens. So that's what we have. Trump involved in asserting war powers as another petty dictator might, except with the power and dimensions of a government that claimed to be the repository of freedom and strength for others who sought and wanted to be free. Trump has, in my opinion, tried to normalize the military aspect of his service in the West Wing. And so he has invited our forces, ICE and others, to deport individuals. No hearings, no protection, no facts that justify it. So we have a situation in which we have people turning up and leaving our country without any due process, meaning fundamental fairness, meaning notice of the charges, needing an opportunity to be heard, an opportunity to review facts and law to see if any action that's being taken is right and just, and we don't have that. ICE has arrested 300 terrorists and sent them to El Salvador. This we know because of a case pending saying the government may not do this. What is going to happen? In El Salvador, the president said, oops, too late. That cannot be our position. Not in the courts, not in the Congress, not if our departments mean anything, not if our Constitution is still active and determinative of what we may or may not do with our nation. What are they doing with those who've been the subject of a rendition out of our country to another country, not known for its gentleness or fair play or opinions about liberty and freedom and rights? What have they done with them? They forced them to their knees. They've shaved their heads. They force them to wear white shirts and shorts. They put them in a cell block. And they expect they'll be in forced labor for at least a year, and that's without any hearings, without a lawyer, without any facts being proven, without any judges, anything. The judge said stop, and these guys kept going. That's not acceptable. You know, another thing that we're doing is we're blocking people from other countries coming here. Don't kid yourself. This is the sign of an incubation of pain and suffering by a group of ne'er-do-wells who relish the ability to hurt and harm and constrain. Interesting. One of the persons who was spirited out of the country, identified as a gang member. You know what the evidence was? That he had a tat. He had a tattoo. And if you have a tattoo, these guys believe that you're a gang member. Now, my wife Holly has a tattoo on her ankle of a pig. So I guess she belongs. You know, you take it as you wish. The combination of ignorance, of servility to unjust orders, echoes down the corridors of time to past dictators who hurt us, while the leaders stood around saying, oh, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Something else is going to happen. So the courts are paying attention and pushing back on the law. The Congress showed itself to be weak in its Senate leadership, for sure. And those 10 members of the Senate who voted to approve the CR, all their leadership positions should be taken from them. There should be a new assembly of leaders in the Senate who use the margin they have when a vote of 60 is required, as was the case with the CR resolution. We're in the spirit of St. Patrick's Day. There's an expression that I think is Trump's motto. The truth is merely an impediment to a terrific story, or slogan, or defense, or whatever you need it to be. So, Yvette is conceitedly just one person with a terrible story that doesn't appear will be righted by this administration. That's just not acceptable. It's just not acceptable. And the other thing we have to keep in mind is that how do we keep up our spirits? And the answer is we look for these advances and we find ways to make them more than the sum of the parts. Where I am, I'm hoping and expecting to help with others. We're going to have a public hearing on March the 28th in Loudoun County. All hands on deck. I don't know what the leadership is going to do. I'm going to be on the panel, I suppose. And it's going to be a large enough venue that people can participate. And I think that's good. Now I want to give a shout out to at least two people. I mentioned yesterday that, I didn't mention him by name, that Jerome Young is the furthest or near furthest requester for a book. He's in Japan. And he sent along a nice gift of chopsticks. And I cherish those. I learned how to use them when I was very young because of my interest in everything Japan. And so there's that. And Wendy Frith from Canada sent along a sketch I'll attach to today's walk and talk. And it captures the dirt road gang walking down this road with animals on either side. And there's a pig on my left side looking up at me. And it's exactly the expression our pigs have. It's quite something. What's missing are all the other people who walk with me, because the animals don't, except in spirit. And I don't know, somehow in the spring we could have a bunch of people out here. Now, although tomorrow is St. Patrick's Day, I want to leave you with a thought about how we approach things in terms of spirit, in terms of attitude. Yeats wrote that it was an Irish curse to dream things the world had never seen. And the way I take that is, it is because, not just Irish, but people across this planet dream things that have never been and fight and struggle to make it happen. And because they believe it does happen. One of my favorite speeches was by Bobby Kennedy, talking about how tiny pulses of water, ripples, can join together and form a mighty force to overthrow the worst in the world. He was at that time talking about apartheid, and I'm paraphrasing, so forgive me, because the original is beautiful. And that's where we are. We are taking the small and the great, our ability to talk, to contribute small amounts of money or time, or just conversation, so that others appreciate they're being had, and they know they're not alone, and they know that they've been cheated, and if we're not careful, it will only get worse. The promises of a dictator are the evil instruments of suppression and hurt. So, that's where we are today. So, I want to thank you for joining me on my traipse among the Cathedral of Trees. And with any luck, I'll be out here tomorrow. Bye-bye.